Hey Tommy, meet the brand new Lucid Air Grand Touring. And in my opinion, this is one of the best cars, not just electric cars, but best cars you could buy today in America. What are you going to do with it?
Well, we're running the Loveland trial. So in this video, we're running the Lucid from our home base in Boulder, Colorado at 5,000 feet all the way up to Loveland Pass at around 12,000 feet through the highway, through the mountains. We're going to talk about the range, the power, the capability, the driver assistance, and everything in between.
Yeah, and we're going to prove to you why this is such an excellent car with one big fault. So let's start with that. The biggest fault with this car is it's got 4 doors. It's a sedan, and people aren't buying sedans. If Lucid had come out and built the Gravity first, then I think this company would be through the roof. But instead, they built a sedan just like Tesla did, and I think people just don't want sedans today.
Well, what we're finding is that more and more buyers across every segment are gravitating pun intended, toward SUVs. And in an era where sedans are slowly bleeding out, I'm not really sure why this company launched with this car. Now, there are some reasons to do this, specifically range, efficiency, power, handling, and Lucid has proved across the lineup from the Air Grand Touring with over 512 miles of range to the Sapphire that they are leading the world in terms of technology. But if they wanted to lead the world in terms of sales, I think that the SUV would have been the way to go.
Wait, did you say this car is over 500 miles of range?
Well, this one with the 20-inch wheels comes in at 485, 486, right around that area. So it's not quite the full 512s. We need the slightly smaller wheel for that number. But yeah, 114, 118 kilowatt hour battery depending on sources. So big battery, big range.
Friends, the threat of climate change grows worse every day. Wildfires, heat waves, floods. Which is why we told you earlier this summer about how one of the best nonprofits fighting climate change is running their annual EV raffle fundraiser. And here are 3 reasons why you should buy a ticket right now to win a Rivian, Tesla, or Ioniq 5 to help the Chesapeake Climate Action Network Action Fund. Reason 1, the tickets are way undersold. The drawing is less than 30 days away and there are still about a third of the tickets unsold. That means the chances of any one ticket holder winning a car are ridiculously good. This year, each ticket in this raffle actually gets you not 1, but 2 chances to win. And here's the second reason to buy. First place gets you your choice of the Rivian R1S or R1T, or the Tesla Model X Plaid, or even the hard-to-get Cybertruck. Second place gets you the amazing Hyundai Ioniq 5. And the final reason, our friends at the CCAN Action Fund do amazing work. They use all the proceeds to directly fight climate change. To enter, visit www.evraffle.org. That's evraffle.org. Tickets are $200, and again, the drawing is big time undersold. So visit evraffle.org today.
Well, a lot of gas cars don't have, most gas cars don't have close to 500 miles of range. And how about horsepower? Tell them that number.
Well, there's a few different trims from 430 at the base trim all the way up to 1,234 in the Sapphire. This Lucid Air is right around 800 horsepower. Dual motor setup, 1 motor in the front, 1 motor in the rear. You can get it in both rear wheel drive and a tri-motor if you get the Sapphire, but 0 to 60, 3 seconds according to Lucid.
Yeah, if 10 years ago I said to you, here is a car that gets 500 miles of range, 800 horsepower, 0 to 60 in 3 seconds, you would be like through the roof. Yeah. And yet today this car goes almost unnoticed and in some ways ignored.
I will say, driving it around our town here in Boulder, where we are very EV heavy, you get a surprising amount of attention. Not a lot of folks, even within the EV casual community, know what this car is. And it's a very unique design, super low, super wide, and super aggressive. I love the front brow here with these creased headlights and that continuous light bar across the front. It's a really attractive design, both outside and in. Why don't you pop the front trunk, Dad?
I was going to do that. I was also going to say, dare I say, super utilitarian, because for a sedan, you won't believe how much room this vehicle has. So let me pop the frunk to show you.
Now, what Lucid has done here is something that I think a lot of other manufacturers should strive to do. If you look at some of the German competitors where they don't even allow you to open up the hood, let alone store things in the front trunk, this Air has a cavernous front end, and it gets even larger when you lift up this little cargo tray and realize it goes all the way down to near the front axle. I mean, this is an impressively large storage area, which is fully lockable, fully enclosed, fully watertight, very, very handy.
Dude, I mean, the Mercedes-Benz EQS, the top of the line Mercedes electric car, doesn't allow you to open the frunk, let alone, give you enough space for, I would say I could probably get in that thing and you could close it, and I'm a big guy.
Yeah, it's amazing how much storage capacity the Air has. I will say the rear is a little compromised. Now they have this super interesting clamshell design on the trunk. My dad's very proud of that screen where you can pop every opening, which is pretty cool. Now, the opening is super wide, which is fantastic. You don't have any of these corners filled with structure or bodywork. The problem is the height is very, very low. So even though it goes deep and it's wide, it's not a super usable load space because of the limited height of the area. But once again, the use of space continues in the floor area. I mean, it's amazing they're able to package the charger, the DC to DC converter, the inverter, everything in a vehicle and still have this much user accessible space.
Look at that. Just
Yes,
poke the camera through there. You can also fold this seat down.
And there's a pass-through.
And look how flat that gets.
Yeah.
I could lay down in the back of this.
No, listen, the space is lengthwise is amazing. It's just kind of a little too squatty for use. And then of course, because the taillights move with the trunk, you want to demonstrate with my bag there?
Yeah, look, there's your gym bag. And you could have 15 of these just in the back here.
Yeah, but because the taillights move with the actual sheet metal, they have to have duplicate taillights and turn signals down here, which is kind of an interesting part
Why don't you go around the other side and I'll sit in the back, show you how much room there is in the back here.
Vehicle code, yeah, let's see. Door handles are retractable.
Look at the amount of room I have. Now, legroom, phenomenal, Tommy. In fact, probably more legroom than in any car I've sat in the last year.
Yeah.
Headroom's a little compromised though.
A little compromised, yeah, but notice the floor is completely flat. There's very little intrusion at all into the passenger cell. Nice size cubby there.
And with 2 USB-Cs and of course controls
yep.
for the back seat and heated rear seats, I believe.
Yep.
And I love this material, Tommy. I mean, look at just the combinations of materials here, right? Luxury is defined by materials that are what they look like. So you'll note that like this is of course leather. In the front you'll have wood, which is real wood. This is real, whatever that is, denim almost. And then I just love the Alcantara on the ceiling. Everything in this car just feels luxurious. And in fact, show them how the doors close, would you?
Yeah, soft closed doors. So bring them into the jam and they're going to suck themselves closed. One thing which is cool, I really think Lucid did a nice job with the color palette in here. They've taken a lot of risks. So the rear seat is this fantastic cream with these bronze piping, which looks great. But then the front seats are actually black, which when I first heard that's what Lucid was doing, I was very skeptical to see how that would work in the real world, but it actually works super well in this cabin. It's a super unique look. A lot of people don't notice it when they get in the car, but it gives this car a lot of interesting presence on the inside.
And then I'm not a huge fan of screens, but they've done it right. I mean, what you have here is a stylish wraparound screen. It's probably 1, 2, 3 screens in one, and then of course you have another screen here, which is showing some fingerprints, unfortunately, but that is part of the problem with the screen.
So these are interesting. This is going to be largely your multimedia control, your navigation, your media settings. There's a home screen here with some of your presets. Now this can also have the ability to control that as well. So I can slide down, get my presets here, and then toggle between Bluetooth, Spotify, Tidal, that kind of thing. But this is also going to be where you find your climate controls. And we have individual climate controls with these little sliders, which I think is a pretty good solution for both the driver and the passenger. And then if you want to get rid of this altogether, you can swipe up like that. And now you got a really big cubby, which allows you to store some additional things there. So look, a lot of folks criticize Lucid for their initial software development. I think it's pretty decent overall. It feels like it's been improved a lot since when these cars first launched. A couple of cup holders. We got wireless charging down there. Decent sized little cubby here. Now we don't have a glass roof optioned in this particular one. And should we look at the specification?
Sure.
Let's look at the pricing on this model. So this is a Grand Touring in the Fathom Blue metallic, almost said phantom. At total MSRP on this one is $125,200, base price $109,900. Now, if you get the pure, you can get this car as low as $69,900 or all the way up to $251,000, depending on if you get the Sapphire.
Let me tell you other things I like. First and foremost, it has real air vents, so you don't have to go into the screen. You'd be amazed at how many times you actually adjust this on a typical drive, and yet, with the Tesla, you'd have to go in the screen and then start mucking with it. And we've owned a lot of Teslas. It's a pain in the butt. And even these controls, the volume control, it just has this weight and heft to it that feels expensive. Same thing for the steering wheel. And I gotta say, as much as I like Tesla's solution of not having necessarily a gear selector, I think if you're going to have a gear selector, the one here by your finger is the easiest to operate. So, drive down, reverse back, and then you have real turn signals, which Tesla also got rid of. And so it feels much more luxurious and much more expensive than, let's say, a Model S, just because it's not just minimalist. It's minimalist, but it's minimalist with a really beautiful design aesthetic.
Well, it is a lot more expensive than a Model S now.
Yes, this is true.
That's the problem. But look, this vehicle is more on plane in my mind with the EQS sedan and the Porsche Taycan. More of a premium segment than I think Tesla has moved away from with the Model S. And compared to the EQS and the Taycan, build quality feels right on par. These are manufactured here in the USA in Arizona. And the overall fit and finish and design, I think, is leading. I think this is a nicer interior than both the EQS and the Taycan.
Look, this number right there, none of those vehicles can come even close to 467, and that's
98%.
98%. And electric cars are all about range, and Lucid has it in spades. You could knock 30% off this, and then you'd be at where Tesla is right now, or where Taycan is, or where the EQS is, and you still wouldn't have 800 plus horsepower.
All right, well, let's do this. Let's saddle up. You want to drive, or you want me to drive?
How about if I drive up there and then you drive down?
All right, sounds good. So we'll hit the road.
How many miles we're going, by the way?
It's about 150 round trip.
Okay, so we're at 467, so we should be down to about 300, give or take.
Yeah, so we'll see where we're at realistically. Like I said, we are at 98% state of charge, and we can see that here. I'm going to go switch it into the percentage. You can see we left our office at 100. I went ahead and I already reset the trips on this vehicle. Displays, where do they hide the trips here? I'm always losing the trips. Come on, Micah. This is embarrassing.
Trip information.
There you go. Thank you. So far on this drive, we've driven 7.3 miles, 1 kilowatt hour out of 118, 5.4 miles per kilowatt hour. That number's going to go down quite a bit.
Yeah, you want to put on here, I'll hold your camera on. You want to put on your seatbelt before we get going?
Yep, I'm going to cut now, and we'll get back to you guys when we're out on the road.
So Tommy, here's the issue in a nutshell with the Lucid. It has not one, but two big problems, and they fixed one of those problems. Obviously, the biggest problem is it's a sedan and nobody's buying sedans, but the bigger problem was when this car first came out, it was just way too expensive. You remember it was like $175,000 for the top of the line Lucid back in the day?
Yeah, the Dream Edition was well over $150,000. But the prices have come down a lot over the last several years. So now it starts at just under $70,000 and can apply for the tax credit. So you get $7,500 back if the MSRP is low enough, which is pretty amazing that they've been able to take virtually the same car, same platform, and lob $100,000 off the price.
Yeah, but unfortunately in the car industry, you get one chance to make a first impression, and I think they kind of blew that chance. And so even though the car is now, relatively affordable, and I do mean relatively, it's too late, I think. I think most people have written it off because they still think it's, exotically overpriced.
Well, and it depends, right? First of all, any Lucid Air is going to be a luxury car, and you are going to be paying luxury car prices. This one in particular, especially at $125,000.
Put your head back, would you?
Hang on, you got to go into the sprint mode here.
Okay, sprint mode, here we go.
Yep.
Ready?
Yep.
Oh my God, that is DeLorean movie fast.
Yeah.
That is tunnel vision fast, starting at 40 miles an hour to 50, I think like a half a second.
It's unreal. What's interesting about this car is from a launch, it doesn't have that same G-force as like a Model S Plaid. You don't get that initial kind of bang of your head. But once you hit about 35, 40 miles an hour, when that peak torque band is programmed in, this thing does not stop pulling until well over the speed limit. You are going to jail by the time it feels like the G's have relented. It's amazing, the acceleration.
But you know what? That's just a one-trick pony, right? Tesla proved that a long time ago with the Plaid versions of all their cars. And at some point, we've owned enough Teslas and we've owned enough electric cars, including the Hummer EV, where, you know, you're just gonna make people sick if you keep doing that. The first time they'll be like giddy, by the third time they'll be like, okay, knock it off. But what I think is important about this car, and I think this is something that most people don't realize, is this sets kind of the bar for electric car luxury. Because what Tesla did was, of course, they came out with, you know, a sedan, Model S, but it was minimalist and it was austere and it felt in some ways cheap because of that. This feels, smells, touches expensive.
Well, I would argue that this goes beyond just electric car luxury and brings us into a space of luxury, period. I would put this up against any S-Class in terms of the premium experience from a sound deadening standpoint, a noise, vibration, harshness, a ride quality. This car rivals the best gas cars in the world, let alone the best electric cars from a comfort standpoint.
Yeah, and like you said, it's more than just on the skin. It goes much deeper than that, right? True luxury, I think, also has to redefine the segment that it lives in. And this does, right? Because the motors are so efficient that you get range of 500 miles. There's this fancy torque vectoring that happens in this car where this will take on any Porsche 911 or Taycan in the canyons, and yes, it will.
Not this one. You really need the Sapphire.
Right, the Sapphire. Let me rephrase that. The Sapphire, you know, will wipe the floor with any of the quote-unquote traditional sports cars, and yet it's a sedan. And I think when you pair that with kind of the way that the car is packaged, with the quality of the interior, with the range, with the power, you get a car that actually, you know, resets what luxury is. Kind of like Bentley did back, you know, when the Bentley boys were racing. Hey Tommy, this is the very first car where I don't have range anxiety because it's got so much battery to begin with.
Yeah, you know, a rated 485 EPA miles of range. It's truly an absurd amount of range. Now, I don't have anxiety with most vehicles at this point, especially with the number of chargers in our area. I'm always confident I can find a place to charge, even if I was running low. But there are folks that are used to long-range gas and diesel vehicles who I think would appreciate that 485 miles of range. Or maybe if you don't have home charging, being able to extend those trips in between fast charging sessions is a good thing.
Yeah, with most electric cars, I'm always looking at my state of charge. With this car, I don't care. Let's talk about where we're at. Top of Loveland Pass almost, right? And we've taken Teslas up here, we've taken a lot of electric vehicles up here, and we've done that in the winter. And in the winter, let's say that a Model Y has, or Model S, if you want to compare apples to apples, has 300 and some miles of range. We're really looking at 20% less. You are.
Yeah, but even if you subtract 20% from the 500 miles of range that this car offers, you are still well beyond what most EVs would do in the summertime. That's how efficient and how large the capability is of this vehicle. Now, as we kind of climb up these mountains, got amazing views of the Continental Divide here in Colorado. Absolutely gorgeous area. It handles pretty well in the turns. Now, it's not as dynamic as the Taycan. It's certainly sprung a little soft. There are different drive modes, like we could put it in the Swift drive setting, which might help.
I don't want to launch us off this cliff, Tommy.
With the driving experience. But this is definitely not tailored to be a canyon carving machine. That's why they have the Sapphire. But it will still do it with a lot of confidence.
Yeah, and for all of you fans of naturally aspirated internal combustion engine cars, up here, you're going to lose 30% of your horsepower and torque. This car has the same amount of horsepower as it did when we left Boulder, as it will at sea level.
The funny thing is, it's probably even more efficient up here and even quicker because of the lack of air density at 10, 11, 12,000 feet above sea level. Pretty cool stuff when you really think about it. Now, the reason our efficiency is so bad is, unfortunately, to get up here, it's all hills. But what comes up must come down, and I'm curious to see if we're going to stick any electricity back into the pack on the way down the mountain.
Yeah, we're almost at the top, and we're just down to Tommy, 69% of the battery.
Wow.
But yeah, I think I would not be surprised if we got back to Boulder, which is 80 miles away from here, at 65% of the battery. What's your guess?
I'm going to say we'll be back at 55%.
Okay, well,
because it's mostly downhill through the mountains, and then we do have some flat areas along the front range of the mountains, but we are just about to crest onto the peak of Loveland Pass here in Colorado.
But let's pull over and let's give them kind of a look at the top of Loveland Pass, and then 11,990 feet, as you can see right there, so almost 12,000 feet.
Yep.
And then we can switch drivers and you can take over on the way back. Are you good with that?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, let's give them just a quick peek of what it looks like up here.
All right, Loveland Pass, Continental Divide. Now, a lot of manufacturers do high altitude testing up here to see how their vehicles perform with this thin oxygen. And actually, judging by that Sprinter over there, and that nearly identical Sprinter over there in Michigan plates, there's a good shot that's exactly what they're doing up here.
Yeah, those cars are performing better than me, I'll tell you that. I'm not performing oh so well.
So I bet that's the Mercedes team. They got a little U-Haul there, and see that front license plate on that Sprinter, how it's thin and rectangular?
Yeah.
That's a German spec Sprinter. So
I didn't know we were going to do a little bit of prototype hunting.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's a lot of interest in a 4500 Sprinter, but check out the views up here. So a lot of hiking to be done in this area of Colorado. A lot of backcountry skiing as well, really, really popular. And way down there in the valley, you can see Interstate 70 winding its way up but through the mountains. This road, US 6, used to be the only way to get through the mountains before the highway was built.
Yeah, and now, obviously, like oil tankers have to come up here because they don't want them going through the Eisenhower Tunnel. So you can get stuck behind one of those trucks, and we were lucky that we didn't.
And these giant poles are actually to help the snowplows in the winter, so they have a clear, visible view of where the edges of the road are, which is just wild to think. So you see those dotted throughout as well.
It's ironically that we're driving the Lucid Air, and I don't feel like there's enough air, Tommy.
No, it's pretty thin up here, for sure.
All right, well, shall we head back on down and see just how efficient this vehicle is? And I'm going to wager this is the most efficient vehicle we've ever taken up the Loveland trials. All right, Tommy, what do you think of the Lucid Air Grand Touring now that you're behind the wheel?
Well, I think from an EV integration standpoint, this vehicle is the best in the business. The refinement, the regen capabilities, you can turn creep on or off. Charging is something like Lucid says 200 miles of range gained in 12 minutes, well over 200 kilowatts of peak charging. It's just so well done. And what really demonstrates this, I think, more than anything, is the use of space in here. The fact that both the front trunk and the rear trunk are so huge, there is such a small amount of space used for actual propulsion electronics. It's just a masterpiece in packaging. It's really, really cool. And then from a driving experience, it's really serene. Now, the NVH is very impressive. With one exception, I think the tire noise is a little loud over 75 miles an hour. I think maybe going to a different tire could help that a little bit. But yeah, it's such a smooth, refined, comfortable experience. It's one of the few cars I've driven where at $125,000 you feel like there is actually some value, which is tough for me to say because that is such a huge amount of money. But if you are shopping in this category, I really feel like this vehicle offers an experience different from the competition.
Yeah, here's the thing, right? You take the engine out of a car and replace it with an electric motor, and it's kind of like pulling the soul out of the thing, right? You lose all that heartbeat, all that wonderful thrumming of the exhaust. The car seems more of an appliance than a living being. And so you have to replace that with something. So the experience has to be more left brain than right brain. It has to be more emotional than intellectual. And I think
I think it's got to be more intellectual than emotional with an electric car, don't you?
With an electric car, the experience has to be more intellectual and less emotional because you don't have that exhaust note, pulling at your heartstrings. And so I think Lucid's one of the first companies that has actually managed to make an electric car, I would say, engaging and fun to drive.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would call it fun to drive. It's fun in the same way a Rolls-Royce is fun. It's fun because it's like driving a bank vault. It's not fun in the same way a Miata's fun, where it's small and tossable. Yes, this car will carve the heck out of a mountain road, but the experience does not lend itself toward that kind of driving. It lends itself for cruising. So it's fun in a build quality serene kind of way. It's not fun in a Taycan, let's see if we can get this car sideways kind of way.
Well, you just gained 1 percentage point.
There you go.
69 to 70 in the last mile. So I'll be curious to see how many more of those percentage points we gain by the time we get back down I-70 to Golden.
It's amazing that we only used 30% to go up something like 6,000 feet in elevation. 30%, that's it, to get from Boulder to the top of Loveland. And I'd be curious to see what the difference would be in the winter on winter spec tires. I think that would certainly have a hit, but even still, you just range for days in this car.
I'd be curious to see what our newly leased Leaf does.
Yeah, the base model Leaf. Yeah, see if we can even make it up here and back down on one go.
Yeah, I think that's our next video, dude.
Yeah, maybe you're right.
Yeah, let's do that next. That'll be a lot less stressful, and that'll be a lot more stressful, Tommy, and a lot less serene. Let's call it that.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Tommy, what percentage did I say we'd make it back at?
Well, you guessed 65, I guessed 55, and currently we are at 67% state of charge. So we use such a tiny amount from the top of the mountain. What were we at, like 69 when we left?
Yeah, I know, it's crazy, isn't it?
So we went 80 something miles with 2%. That is pretty wild. Here, let me go to the trip here. You can see, so we're now at 154. So right around 70, 80 miles, 36 kilowatt hours, 4.3 miles per kilowatt hour over the length of our trip. That is pretty astonishing.
Yeah, I mean, we still have more than 2/3 of the battery left.
Yeah, and if I go to displays here, and if I go to units and go to distance, you can see we have 318 miles of range remaining after our 154 mile trip. So this thing is a range monster. Now, one thing worth noting, we don't have the top tier Dream Drive system. We just have the basic Dream Drive in this car, which means we didn't have some of the cool lane centering stuff or semi-autonomous stuff that this car can have, so we didn't have a chance to test that out, but comfortable highway car nonetheless.
Yeah, I would say here, mind blown. This car has done something that no electric car has done in the last, 15 years since Tesla first came out with the Model S. And that is allow us to drive a car without any, at least for me, fear of range anxiety.
Yeah, no, I think it's spectacular. It really is an incredible vehicle with just such an impressive amount of efficiency, considering we're in this enormous, huge sedan. To be getting 4.3 miles per kilowatt hour, that's better than our teeny tiny Nissan Leaf that does 4 on average. So we are just killing it.
Yeah, but I can hear the comments right now, Tommy. People are saying, yeah, but it's $125,000. And, for that much money, it better have that kind of range. But the trick here is Lucid has lowered their prices to meet kind of market conditions. So if you wanted to get this and you wanted kind of the sweet spot, which one would you get?
Well, don't get the Pure because that's rear-wheel drive. Pure actually is the one I would love to get, but it's rear-wheel drive only, which doesn't work in Colorado. The Grand Touring and the Sapphire are just too overkill, so I think the sweet spot is the Touring model, which has a slightly smaller battery than this does, so you're not going to get that massive 500 miles, but you're still going to get the refinement and the chassis controls, still 0 to 60 in like 3.4 seconds, and that model is, based on their website price, is going to be low to mid 80s, and then you can even apply for some tax credit on that, so you can get that in the high 70s. So that's the one I would get.
Or if you're not in Colorado and you do want a two-wheel drive, you can get that down in the 60s. And I know I say 60s as if it was cheap compared to, you know, other cars on the road. Sure, you can get a Honda Accord or a Toyota Camry for $30-some thousand, but you're not going to get all this luxury. You're not going to get, you know, all of this kind of, well, I would say wonderful technology, because the technology in here really is the promise of electrification brought to life.
Yeah, it really is that good. So let's see. I'm gonna go into percentage here. Final number 66, Dad. You're right on the money. 66% state of charge up here. And I'll show you what that equates to in the guessometer. 317 miles of range remaining. And then we're gonna go car. Let's go to the trip. So that is total of 155.9 miles driven, 4.3 miles per kilowatt hour, only 36 kilowatt hours used. That is awesome.
Well, let's go outside and kind of let them know on the TFL scale of buy it, lease it, rent it, or forget it, Tommy. What do you give the Lucid Grand Touring at $125,000, my man? You coming out? Another thing I think we need to note, it's 91 degrees out here. The air conditioning was going the whole time. So it wasn't as if we were like, you know, driving it without any of the climate controls or babying it around. I mean, we drove it hard, and we drove it the way normal people would drive it up to Loveland Pass. Now, on the TFL scale of buy it, lease it, rent it, or forget it, tell me, what do you give it?
Well, for me, I think this thing's got to be a buy it. It is an attractive design, one of the best interiors in the industry, period. It's fast, and it goes such a long way. So I'd say go for it. Maybe buy it like a year or two used after some of the depreciation hits.
Yeah, I mean, electric cars are basically like, you know, like phones, right? So definitely buy it used or lease it new. Yeah, I'm jealous if you can do that and if you can afford it. As always, this is Roman.
And Tommy, head over to TFL EV for more Loveland trial videos. We'll see you guys next time.
Leaf next?
Leaf next.